Who's the stronger, tougher boxer? The guy who has an unbelievable block that you can't get through it? Or the guy who doesn't need a block because you can literally just pummel the guy and it doesn't affect him?
That's a great analogy. It's exactly kind of what it is. Yeah. You don't get hurt by it. And you become kind of an alpha in a circuitous way. You become so confident that nothing really matters. Again, I use self-mastery because what that means is you're able to talk to yourself and manage your own thoughts, manage your own vulnerabilities, recognize that those vulnerabilities are yours and yours alone.
Welcome back to Raising Men. Our guest today, Dave Rossi, built 2 multi-million-dollar companies in Silicon Valley. Despite all the success, he found himself burnt out and disconnected. And what he discovered after losing almost everything became the foundation of his important work today. That true success isn't about winning. It's about awakening. Dave, thanks so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to have you on Raising Men. So are there any topics you feel particularly passionate about that you want to center on? I think I have the answer to that. Or is there anything you want to avoid talking about?
No, I'm an open book. What I'm passionate about is helping other people. From a life where I was in the past, I was competitive and I would not promote my competitors, which was everybody. Now all I want to do is promote my competitors because there's nothing that hurts me. Helping someone else doesn't put me down.
There is a real wisdom to that. And it's funny because we all live in this society that has so much wealth, right? And that wealth was generated because we have a variable pie mentality. We understand that if person A gets more, that doesn't necessarily take away from person B. There's a way to organize things such that A plus B equals more than just double. It creates additional value.
But that's an enlightened view.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what I call a fixed pie mentality versus a variable pie mentality. The variable pie mentality is, okay, Dave, you and I are going to get together and we're going to do a podcast together. And the result is we all gain. We benefit, you benefit, I benefit, and whomever listens to the podcast benefits. Whereas a variable pie mentality is the thing, okay, well, I'm going to do this thing, but I want to benefit more than Sean, or I want to benefit more than Dave, and I'll give him a little bit of my ideas, but not all of them, or whatever, right? And that just creates less value.
And that's, so that's kind of a spiritual view, consciously. Hey,
Sure.
There's an abundance to the world, and I want to share, and I'm going to build a partnership with Sean. But there's still the tussle between the animal of us, the Homo sapien in us, that wants to hoard and that views the world as scarce, and I need more, and I need more, and I need more, and let me protect what's mine. And so that belief of scarcity and abundance only goes so far on the animal scale until you have enough spiritual behavior or spiritual power to say, I don't need to be an animal. I can choose with logic and reason and not fear as an animal. And so those things kind of counter each other and they fight, right? I call it the Squirrel Nut Theory. The squirrel will look for nuts constantly. No matter how many nuts it has in its den, it will keep looking for nuts.
Right.
That's just what it does. It's an animal and doesn't have
wired
logic
that
and
way.
reason. Doesn't share, just keeps taking.
Yeah.
And, there's that famous quote to a billionaire, how many millions is enough? Well, it gets just one more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're feeding that hole.
Yeah. And I did that.
Yeah.
I was very competitive as younger, and I would even talk down to other people to make myself feel better about myself with a scarcity mentality that if I promoted somebody else or helped somebody else, it would just be more competition for me. And so in my past life, when I was competitive and I look at the world as scarce and I was relatively insecure, I would do that. And now all I want to do is help people because that's not real.
Yeah, it's the thought that brings to mind for me is in sports. I used to be a competitive volleyball player, and there's a real value to competition. There's a real value in the kind of fiction that, all right, I'm going to go against my enemies and I'm going to train hard and I'm going to defeat my opponent. But then when the game's over, that is over. And you're all buddies and you all hang out at the bar afterwards and, tell war stories essentially. And there's a way that spirit of competition can sour and turn into a little poison where you don't just, it's not just a game anymore. It's not just we're not pretending to hate our enemies. We actually do hate our opponents. And that is poison. And you're not going to get any better. What you end up starting to do is look for opportunities to hobble them, as opposed to you want your opponent to be as great as possible so that if you prevail over them, that means you're even greater, right?
Well, I think it goes to an underlying premise. There's this phrase, if you love to walk, you'll walk longer and farther than if you're walking to a destination. So if you're playing volleyball for the destination of winning, then your opponents are your obstacle to winning, and you hate them and you despise them and you want to pummel them because that's an obstacle to the goal of achievement. If you love the sport, if you just love volleyball, then these competitors are a way to get better at your sport, and you actually value their prowess. You value their skills because it only makes you better, and you can be grateful for that competition. And the competition is about self-enjoyment of your craft rather than destination. And I think,
so we need to almost redefine the notion of winning. So we think of winning as prevailing over our opponents, but winning is really improving from the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, let's go back to the paradox of animal, human, and being, right? The animal side and the being side that Nietzsche talked about in his book. It's the paradox of animal versus spirit, which is I have to win and I have to gain and I have to survive. There's an instinctual DNA in us that we have to survive. Every tree, every worm, every fish, every bird, it's out there just surviving. And we are part of the animal kingdom. However, we have cognition. And so we have this crash of animal and cognition. We're more than just an animal, but we still have those innate DNA drivers. Those drivers are still in us. The more evolved you are as a human being, right? You go off of being uncivilized and become civilized. And then you become more cognitive, and you become more civilized. As you keep going up this scale, more and more civilized, what do you become? You become less and less of an animal and more of a spirit. And I don't mean spirit as a woo-woo. I mean it like I have power over my body. My body says, stop running. My spirit says, keep running. It's good for me. The things that give you pain, the more spiritual you become, more power over your body you win. And so there's always this tussle between those two factions. And the way you talk about volleyball is obviously on the more evolved side, right? Less from the animal, more to the spirit, because you appreciate the competition. It will make me better at my craft. I love this. This is great. You don't look at your competitors as a threat to your goal like an animal would, like a lion would. I'm going to get this meal and get it from them. And that tussle exists in everything all the time.
Yeah, constantly. I like that definition of spiritual, as in, so the definition being it's your power of your mind over your body. Your body is sending you signals, and your mind can either become a slave to those signals, and you're an animal. That's what the squirrel is doing. Or it could be the master of those signals. It can take in the data and then make the appropriate decision based on your values.
Right. And I think to distill it even easier, you said it very well. It's data. So when you're running or exercising, the data is lactic acid, heart rate, body temperature, and your body is now processing all this information. And the brain says, stop, you're tired. This is harder than you ever gone before. Your brain will tell you to stop, right? Yeah. And you say, no, I want to do more. That is a spiritual, I call that spiritual behavior. You're not acting beyond the senses, the biomarkers that your body is telling you. And that's a spiritual act. Now, the issue is your brain will start rationalizing. You really should stop. This is really hard. You might hurt yourself. Is this really what you want to do? No, I do. This is okay. And you keep trying to counter that. These are physical things. Where this gets more complicated is emotional things. And what we're talking about in terms of competition is more emotional and not physical. But the mechanism is exactly the same. there are still cursors that your brain is sending you. It's not lactic acid and an elevated heart rate. It's worry, doubt, fear, jealousy, competition, scarcity, anger. All of these emotions
Right.
are the biomarkers. Now, what's the feedback? Your eyes and ears hear things, right? I could lose. If I lose, people won't like me. If they won't like me, I'm less valuable. If I'm less valuable, I'm not winning. If I'm not winning, I'm not survival of the fittest. If I'm not survival of the fittest, I won't procreate. Then I'm a loser. This is not going to be survival. What am I going to do? And that conversation with your subconscious mind produces all kinds of emotions and neurotransmitters and rationalizations. And you have to go beyond those fears. Fear emotionally is lactic acid physically, and you have to be able to act beyond those signals that your body is giving you.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I had an experience yesterday, in fact, with my boy, and I would love to get your feedback about it. So on Sundays, I take my boy to a workout. I do a CrossFit workout on Sunday mornings, and I bring him with me. And we do, he does a modified version of whatever workout I'm doing. And in the case of this past Sunday, it involved there were 5 different rounds, and each round had a run in it. And the run started at 200 meters, and then it went to 400 and 600 and 800, and then 1,000. And so we were constantly running and running more and more. And he's only 6 years old. He's 2,000 meters is a lot of running
Okay.
for him. Yeah. And so I remember pulling around the last bend on the 800-meter run. We were kind of pulling around the corner, and we just had another 100 meters to go before we were done with that run. And he started to complain about how tired he was and his side hurt and all of this stuff. And I wanted to cultivate in him. I wanted that vision that, okay, this is the place where your mind has to take over. You have to override your body here. And I wanted to get that feeling viscerally in him. And
Mhm.
so I'm interested. So I'd love to know what you think about what should I have done in that moment. And then I want to tell you what I did and get your feedback. So what should I
Oh,
have
well, I'm
done
sure
in
you
that
did a
moment?
great job, Sean. Listening to you already, I'm sure it was well thought out and you did a good job. Usually when people ask those questions of me, I usually always give responses based on spiritual principles. And
Yeah.
I don't mean spiritual woo woo. I mean spiritual in terms of just being able to power over the body. And so,
Yeah.
and I think the value to that advice is it's not situational and it's not moralistic or ethical. It's across the board. If this is spiritual advice and you just apply it, you don't marginalize it based on where you are.
Sure.
Now, a 6-year-old's a little bit different, but I've had kids that age, and usually my goal, and well, one of the most powerfully spiritual things you can do is stop being a parent in terms of biological parent. The second you can say, I'm not this biological person's master, is one of the most powerful things you can do to connect with your son, because you look at him like an equal spiritually,
Mm.
but you have more experience and more advice that you can give them. And so there's a very powerful distinction when I treated my kids as equals, but I gave them advice from an adult and I gave it to them as if they were my boss or if they were a client. That level of respect really made a huge difference in my relationship. And in a situation that you explain, I would just try to give them information and empower them to make their own choices. I'm sure, a lot of people consider my parenting a little bit unconventional, that I really give my children carte blanche to make their own decisions,
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not afraid of them suffering, and I accept their suffering, and the suffering is actually a lot of value in them becoming better people. So I would give them information. The kind of information I would say is, yeah, again, my kids are older now; they're in their 20s, and my youngest is 17, but 6. I don't quite remember how cognitive they would be with this advice, but I
Right.
would say something like, "Did you know that your body gives up at 40% of its capacity? 40% of capacity, your body says, I'm tired because your body doesn't want you to get hurt. Yet
Yeah.
going past that 40%, you have 60% more effort left. And I just want you to know that. And if you can't push past that 40% marker, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe you're not ready for it yet. But real success, the champions, the greats, the greatest the world has ever seen, they learn how to push back that 40. And if you want to be that person, then you have to learn how to push past that. And if you don't, that's okay too. And it's just information at that point. And I think
Yeah.
at that age, you don't want to push them. You just want to educate them and then model behavior. You can
Yep.
say, I'm going to push back that 40. It's okay if you want to sit and watch, but I feel like I want to vomit and my side hurts too. And I know that success comes from pushing past that point. So I'm going to do it. And it's okay that you don't. And at some point, I'm sure you'll be able to if you want to.
I think that's a fantastic way to handle it. What I ended up doing is, and I thought this was a good idea at the time. And we just had that last 100 meters, and I said, boy, this is the workout right here. This is the whole reason we do all of this other stuff, and all of the rest of all of the exercises that we're doing leads us to this moment. And this right here, pushing through that feeling and finishing anyway and continuing the run when you know you want to stop, that is the workout. That's the whole point. And I ended up pushing him through it. And I actually do think that was the right thing to do in the moment, because he had decided to engage in the run. But overall, he wasn't feeling the workout that day. And I kind of pushed him into doing it. And it ended up being kind of a negative thing between us. And it was after the workout, there was a little bit of a sour feeling, because I had pushed him farther than he really wanted to go. And I think the lesson that I'm taking from you in this moment is that has to be his choice. I can
Yeah.
set up all the dominoes and I can arrange them in the way that I think is best for him. But he's got to be the one to push the dominoes over.
You
And
know,
if he doesn't want to do it, and if he's not ready to do it today, that's fine. There's no, and I've actually internalized that from before. Like I started just bringing him to the workout with me and just letting him play on his tablet over on the bench while I worked out. And then eventually he wanted to participate.
well,
But
a
I
couple
felt
things.
at the
Yeah.
time when he was playing, I was like, man, come and do the workout with me. But he would just do a couple exercises and then go sit down again. And that it turned
Based
out,
on the knowledge, based on
yeah,
your knowledge in your brain at that moment, your brain said everything I'm doing is the right thing. But
yeah,
that was based on your understanding and your knowledge base in your brain, and also your attachment to this child. You want his success, okay?
yeah,
And part of what you push for is because you want his success a bit for you.
that's right.
Some of this for you is you want his best, so you will look your best as well. We all
Yeah,
want our best for our kids. Now, I'm coming to you from a place where my oldest son is an acclaimed musician. He played at Carnegie Hall at 13 years old. He won a competition, played on a national orchestra, just submitted an audition. He was first chair of trumpet player in the entire nation at Carnegie Hall at 13. He went to a music school. My middle son was an All-American water polo player. He's playing Division I water polo right now
that's
at
amazing.
UC San Diego. And my daughter, who's 17, is on a nationally ranked high school water polo team. She's being recruited by Division I schools as well. And I do not push my children. I've never pushed any of them. I don't ask them for anything. I give them information. And I tell you something, they're not me. I was a college football player, and they're not me. I work way harder than they do. They're just really talented. And so I see them not work as hard as me, and I just hold my tongue and I realize that they have to choose their own path. I don't get how all this talent. So I say things to them like, you know, please don't leave anything on the table. If you have talent on the score of 100, maximize your talent. Don't maximize 80% of your talent, maximize 100% of your talent. Nothing would be more devastating than being given these great gifts from whatever source or God or your DNA, your family, and then not using it. So I see you have more talent and I see you not utilizing it. It's for you to decide what to do with, but I see you could be doing more. No shame, no judgment. I'm just telling you what I see. And that was
Yeah,
really hard for me not to do what you said, which again, nothing wrong with what you said. The
yeah,
concern is that they feel shame. They feel that they disappointed you. They just want to make their parents pleased. And part of your drive is appears to me a bit more parent-child relationship than equals. Because if your boss was running with you, or a client or an advertiser, you may not take such a pronounced position with them being tired, right? And
Yeah.
that's how you should look at your son, is that he is that client or advertiser or boss, but he just doesn't have the experience to know how to respond. So given the experience and the knowledge, let him choose. And as a parent, your most powerful influencer is modeled behavior. It's not words or
Yeah.
motivating them. There's a great quote. Don't pay people to build a ship. Make them love to want to sail, right? And so your son will want to work out harder just by watching you modeling excitement and exuberance and talking about your experience without his experience will make him want to be like you naturally at that age. You
Yeah.
had very little to do.
That makes me realize something, which is that there are times when I have a reflex for whatever reason to make my son feel shame. And there has never been a time in his entire life where that was ever the right thing to do. Or that was ever the constructive thing to do. And I felt good about it. I've never, and there have been times I usually resist that temptation, and that's actually become kind of a red flag for me. If I start to feel I have this urge to want him to feel shame, I withdraw from that. It's kind of gross.
That's a spiritual act.
Yeah.
Those are the emotional precursors of biofeedback that
Mm.
you as a father, just like a mother bird kicks her bird out of the nest, right? They kick him out of the nest based on instinctual data, not necessarily what they see in their baby bird. They just kick him out. Sometimes those birds die,
Yeah.
right? They don't have cognition to say, maybe I'm pushing them out too early. We're
Right.
not birds and we're not primates. And so we have to break away from an animalistic behavior as a parent, above a child, and use more logic and reason and more emotion and more information that we have, and don't do what you think is natural to you, but do what's best for the child. And I treat all my children differently because they're different people, and
Mhm.
so I work really hard to have the self mastery to say, okay, I really want to say this. I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do. Slow down. Let me just think about this for a second. What is
Yeah.
my goal? What am I trying to achieve?
Yeah.
What are the pitfalls of me sharing this or saying this? And what's the gain? And that doesn't mean you can't say hard things. You have to say hard things. I do say hard things.
Absolutely.
But the question is it for me? Is it for them? Is it my patterns, the way I was raised as a parent, or is it good parenting now as a more spiritually minded parent? So I debate that as well all the time. That's awareness.
Yeah. I have this metaphor that I like to use for that dichotomy, what you're calling the spiritual versus the animalistic. It's like we have two brains in our heads, and I mean, it's literally two brains. There's the limbic system and there's the prefrontal cortex, and one of them is the Conan the Barbarian brain, and you need that brain to protect you from the saber-toothed tiger or whatever,
There's a lot of those
or the
around these
danger,
days,
the
right?
oncoming car, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the Sherlock Holmes brain, which is the analytical side. And the vast majority of the time, you will have better results if you keep yourself in Sherlock Holmes brain and let Conan the Barbarian brain send you signals and say, danger's here, or you should be mad about this, or any of those things. But then take those signals, apply your deep core values, and then make an informed decision about the way that you want to proceed.
Well, there's two aspects to that. I agree with you 100%, but I'll up level it, or I'll add a couple layers to that. Um, first of all, there are no saber-tooth tigers anymore.
Right.
The saber-tooth tigers are, I don't want my son to be a wuss. It's a
Right.
saber-tooth tiger. You feel that neurotransmitter in your body that says, there's a possibility that this kid might be a wimp and that's not what I want for him. So I'm going to do this. Now
Hmm.
that information is limbic, because what's happening is the amygdala in the limbic system takes information of what it sees and hears. My son's tired and he's not going to finish his workout. And then it processes it in your brain and it compares it to belief structures and how you were raised. And in your
Yeah.
amygdala, it says, in the past, I've seen this before with my sibling or myself, and this result into a weakness. And this is what I'm seeing, and this is what I'm feeling. And then you have these emotions kick out of fear or drive. That's very animalistic. Okay. That's all animal. That's all biology. Okay. Now, you have to break out of that. And your son is having a different limbic reaction. Everybody's experience is through their own belief structure in their own amygdala that's part of the limbic system. Okay. And you're right. Getting out of the limbic system is where your frontal lobe is, where enlightenment and consciousness resides. There's a lot of executive functions. And the limbic system has chemicals, right? It has neurotransmitters. The neocortex does not. The neocortex does not have any connection to the hippocampus or these other facilities in the brain that can release these neurotransmitters that are exactly the same neurotransmitters that were served when we were running from a saber-toothed tiger. So it
Yeah.
feels pretty stressful, right? We're
Yeah.
literally giving our son advice as if a saber-toothed tiger is attacking us.
Right.
I don't want you to be a wimp. I want the best for you, and you better push through this, right? But we're not we're not primates. There's so much more complexity to us than that rudimentary, system now. We have cognition, we have shame, we have guilt, we have fear, we have anger, we have self-esteem, which are
Yeah.
all biological and they're not real because they're based on programming, they're based on experiences, but they feel real at the moment. And so, the thing that I try to do with my children is give them the power to act over their body, express to them, I know this must feel hard, I know this must be scary, but this is where growth really comes from.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. My kids and I was a very adventurous individual. I take my kids to this river and we jump off this bridge into the water, and my kids would do it, and they did it as young kids, and we'd all go do this. And we were there once with my brother and his son. My brother had a wife who was very conservative by nature. Their son was raised very conservative. My brother was very conservative. I mean, they just didn't take risks. And so I'm jumping off this bridge. My 5-year-old daughter's jumping off this bridge into water. And my nephew, my brother's son, is like, I'm not doing it. This is scary. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his brain is telling him this is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's a thought. And the emotion is fear. Thought is danger, emotion is fear. You can't have an emotion without a thought. Okay. And if you look at the pictures of this little jumping exercise, my kids are smiling, dripping wet, and here's my nephew dry with this horrible smirk on his face because he
Right.
wouldn't do it
Right.
because he didn't have the amygdala. He had the amygdala memory of danger.
Yeah.
Heights are danger, and so was it dangerous? Well, not really. His cousin, the same age, was doing it. She
Mhm.
was safe. So it really wasn't objectively dangerous, but it was dangerous to him. And he still felt that. And he still felt that fear. Now, it took him 2 more years and he would jump. But that's because he began to change his belief structure. Hey, every single year, my cousins are doing this and they're safe. Maybe it isn't dangerous anymore. You see? And so I want to get into my kids' heads. I don't know how they've been programmed. I don't know what their belief structure is. I don't know what they grabbed from me as an adult or my ex-wife as their mother and what they grow with. All I could do is give them the mechanism to have power over it and make good choices. So that's kind of how I know there's spiritual principles and spiritual practices. Get out of the body.
Yeah. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if he doesn't want to jump off the cliff today, that's, it'll
Yeah.
eventually happen.
Yeah. And so I got remarried. I was married for 17 years and then I was single for many years. And then I met someone, dated them for 6 or 7 years and we got married. And she never had kids. She was never married. And so she considers me a very unconventional parent. And
Yeah.
so I'll give you one example of being more of an adversary, or I'm sorry, or more of an emissary than a parent. My
Mhm.
daughter's just got her driver's license and she says, "Hey, I'm going to drive to my friend's house at 9:30 at night." I'm like, "Well, it's raining." She's like, "Yeah, I know." I said, "Well, you're 16. You've only had your license for a short period of time." "Yeah, I know." and you're driving over Highway 17, which is over to the beach, which is kind of a slippery road. She says, I know. And I says, well, I think it's dangerous. She says, I know. I said, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can make your own choice. But if you crash and die, that's on you. And I'm not going to demand that you don't go. And I'm not going to demand. And what if you just slide out and hit a car and you smash your hand on the steering wheel and you can't play water polo anymore? These are your choices. Are you willing to risk the possibility of that happening? She says, well, I'm aware of the dangers. I said, okay, I'm not sure that you do. And I
Yeah.
hope you're not over your head, but you make your own decisions. I'm not going to live your life for you. It's all on you. And my girlfriend at the time said, how could you let her do that? Demand her not to. I said, hey, she's got to live her life, and I can't live it for her, which is relatively unconventional. And I have to realize that if you smashed her hand and she broke her hand and she can't play and just get into college, well, that's where life wanted her to go, and I accept that. I think
Yeah.
it's more important to make her be an individual and have the power to make choices than always did. And she was 16. I think she's old enough to know what right and wrong is. And
Yeah.
she makes very good decisions, and I don't give her curfews. I don't tell her what to do. And here's a great kid with great grades and great discipline and all these things. So I feel fortunate. But that's the level that I've taken to give my kids information and let them make choices.
That's a gutsy call. Well, but
Yeah.
part of what enables you to do that is you laid the foundation of that wisdom. And so, you're just dealing with this in the margins. You don't have to worry about her doing something so ridiculous that it really is a danger to her. She can be a rational consumer of the risk.
Exactly right. And I do everything. Her friend choices, I'll say, hey, this friend looks like they're taking advantage of you. This doesn't look like the kind of relationship with this friend that I think you want. This
Yeah.
is what I see, but
Yeah.
do what you want. I'm just telling you what I see, ask me any questions if you need to. It's your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And for that reason, she has all the accountability of her choices. And because of that, she'll come to me and ask me questions. Hey, what do you think about this? Or what should I do here? Or what do you do see? There's no
Yeah.
fighting. I don't really tell them what to do,
Right.
right? Diet is the toughest thing. I'm like, hey, you're eating pretty poorly. No, I'm not. Well, I think you are. Let's not argue.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think you eat well. I think you eat poorly. That's okay. We can have differences of opinion. You can decide if you want to listen to me or not. But this is what I think. And I don't argue with them. I'm not going to argue. This is my point. This is your point. Let's move on.
Hmm.
It's very unconventional. And again, I have to say that my kids have met high standards for the world report card, but I still don't know exactly what's going on in their minds, and I can't. But in
Yeah.
terms of achievement that the world looks at, they get good grades, they're in good colleges, they're all healthy, and they do all the things they're supposed to do. I do see their dysfunctions, and I do see where they're sad. And my oldest son has a bit of ADD, diagnosed with ADD, and he comes to me crying, "Hey, I don't have the friends I want to have." And I said, "Look, you're 21 years old, and I'm really sorry for you, but you're not doing the things you need to do to not be in that position. You still eat poorly, you still eat processed foods, you still eat sugar, which promotes ADD behavior. You're not working out as much as you could. So I'm really sorry for you, and I really feel badly for you. But sorry, dude, you're not making the steps you need to make not to be in this position. That's on you."
Yeah. That's a tough call. That's a tough conversation to have.
Well, I mean, honestly, Sean, the thing about it, I think that my model behavior is probably the best role in this. Is I don't get sucked in. Like
Yeah.
my stoicism, and I'm not trying to say compliment myself, but they see the fact that I actually am not going to let their suffering ruin my life. I have a life to
Right.
live as well. And so I walk it for myself as well. And I care for my children. And I love my children, and I'll do anything to help them. But that doesn't mean I'll take away their life to prevent them from having their mistakes.
Hmm.
So if they have to live their mistakes, I have to accept that that's their life, and that I took on the role as a parent to do that, but
So
no
how
more
do
than
you
that.
deal with how would you imagine dealing with just really, really extreme behaviors like that? Like I have a friend who has a child who's addicted to drugs, and the child's an adult now. Um, but this and the child is miserable, and the child is on a path that is just absolute tragedy, and it affects my friend very, very seriously. How do
Well,
you how do you cultivate the wisdom there?
well, I wouldn't I wouldn't let it affect me. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to naturally affect you, but I would
Yeah.
work really hard not to let it affect me. I've had when I got divorced, I lost my whole life. I mean, I lost my house. I didn't file bankruptcy, but literally I started over with $16. I mean, on this engine, I literally had $16 in my bank account and had to go get a job and start over after making, $500,000 a year owning a business to literally saying, I'm not going to be married to you anymore and I'll lose the business if I have to. And I did. And it was dead. And anyway, it was a long story. But the point
Oh my
is,
God.
I've suffered as well. I've drawn on a couple strengths during that period. One of them was Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, this is a tough time, but it's not as tough as what that guy went through. I mean, wow, that guy made it through and this is bad, but not as bad as that guy. And for your
And
friend,
this is
it
his
is bad.
perspective. Yeah,
Right.
it's
And
an amazing book.
it's going to be bad, but he has a life to live. And every second that he doesn't live his life is a second he's not promoting his own life. Your friend has a journey, and maybe his biggest challenge, and this kind of comes from another book, Journey of Souls. Your friend has a journey as well, and maybe one of his journeys is to live his own life and to understand what it means to decouple his own child's journey from his, and to act as a support and not connected to it and not part of his journey.
Right.
And those can run parallel paths. You don't have, being an empath actually isn't that great of a thing, right? The only value in being empathetic is that it gives you insight to what they're feeling, but it's
Right.
kind of painful to be
Yeah.
empathetic.
Right.
Compassion is a much different emotion than empathy.
Mhm.
Empathy, you feel their pain and you're wrapped up in their pain and you're living their pain and you're losing your own life and their own lives. And that
Yeah.
two lives being set down a path for one person's journey is not a spiritual path for me. It's not reverence for life. It's not reverence for your own life. And so I think he has to live his own life and he needs to recognize that that is his son's journey and
Yeah.
he needs to do whatever he thinks he can do as an individual, emotionally separate. Okay, it means I pay and I support and whatever that means to him, however that means to him, how do we get him help? But it's that kid's life and that kid's decision. And if he can't make that kid want to save himself, then there's nothing he can do about it. And lots of times kids have to hit rock bottom before they change.
Yeah.
That's a difficult thing to see your kids suffer. It's a very difficult thing. In the midst of my divorce, my middle son had suicide threats, and I had to see his mom, who would travel, and he was on suicide watch one weekend, and the school said, just don't leave him alone. And this was a transition day. And I called him at school and said, is your mom picking you up from school? He said, oh, yeah, she's picking me up from school. Well, I learned she wasn't even in town. And I text her and said, do not let Uber pick him up. I will pick him up. Do not get him a ride. If he's alone, I'll pick him up. And she's basically, leave me alone. It's on my time. F off. So I called my son. Hey, do not, I'll pick you up. You're alone, I'll pick you up. He goes, no, I'm with mom, I'm fine. Well, he lied because he wanted to protect her. And she got him a ride from Uber to go back to the house by himself. He was home alone until 9 p.m. at night. And I knew that. She wouldn't let me bring him dinner. He wouldn't let me bring him dinner. And he sat alone. The point is, I had to let him suffer. There's nothing I could do. And I had to learn that lesson to
Yeah.
let my kid suffer. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Tough to do as a parent. I know it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's their
Yeah.
path. It's his path.
Yeah. It's like the suffering is a debt we owe somehow. And if we pay it early, it's a lot less. But if we pay it later, it can be everything.
It builds. Yeah,
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle would say that suffering serves one purpose. It serves a purpose of really realizing you no longer need to suffer, and you'll suffer as long as you need to suffer until you realize that. And so, again, talking about your mind, it's your amygdala batting around its memories and its beliefs and its epigenetics and its traumas, right? And so this kid had traumas where he's trying to escape pain and he's using drugs to numb himself. And
Right.
that's deep inside of his amygdala. And the kid keeps on getting stimulus that says, I need to numb myself,
Mhm.
Um, and that's that kid's journey. and he's got to beat it. Because if his dad keeps hijacking him,
Yeah.
save him. That's not going to solve the problem. It's just a band-aid until the next one is needed. It's just not, and as a parent, again, you're trying to protect your child, but you really can't. At that
Right.
age, they're adults.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
need to live their life, no matter how painful it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough to hear. And I don't mean to be brash about it. I don't want to come off
No, it's got to
insensitive
be the
to it.
toughest thing to deal with. It's got
Yeah,
to be the absolute toughest thing.
yeah, yeah. I have a friend once. A guy used to work for me, and him and his wife were users, and their daughter got taken by CPS.
Mm.
And he started cleaning up his life, and he said, will you come speak on behalf of me in front of the court? And before that, he was angry, and he was still using even when the courts took her, and he hated CPS. And I said, look, Child Protective Services is actually helping you. You should be thankful for them. You're not capable of having a child right now. And I know you hate them for taking your child, but their objective is to help you. You should thank them. And if you want your child, it isn't to fight them, it's to fight yourself and
Mm.
fix yourself. Now,
Yeah.
eventually he did get cleaned up. He got custody of his daughter back. He left his wife because she couldn't clean up, and who knows where she is. But now he's completely cleaned up his life, stable job, got his daughter back, single parent, raising her all on his own. And he's fixed that in him. But he had to kind of hit rock bottom and lose his daughter to be able to put his life back together. And your friend's son, if they're going to hit rock bottom at 20 or 25, it's a lot sooner than in his 40s or early 50s.
Yeah.
Do it.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's our path.
You've written a new book about
Yes.
masculinity, and I feel like we are at a moment where that kind of thing is just, we need these messages. We need a healthy form of masculinity to be an aspirational vision for us. Tell us about your new book.
Well, I wrote it kind of to help my boys, and I wrote it to help men. I wish I knew these things when I was younger, and the things that I write about really aren't mine. It's my experiences that I have learned and read through other books and other texts and other philosophers and other psychologists. Carl Jung is a lot in this book, and also the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell talks about in the book A Man with a Thousand Faces. We all go through this hero's journey, and maybe your friend's son is on his hero's journey. We all have these crashes in our lives, or we should. And what emerges from that crash is the new you. You go away, you fight your demons, and you come back.
Mhm.
And so I wrote this book really to help men. And the original title of the book was "Stop Being a Real Man So You Can Be a Real Man." And the essence is still true to that. The name has changed, but the essence is what people think is a real man isn't actually real masculinity.
Yeah.
Because the perception of an alpha male or the perception of a real man changes from person to person. And so a young man is trying to be real. He's trying to be virile. He's trying to be an 800-pound gorilla. He's trying to survive in the world. And he's looking at these definitions saying, maybe I need to be more like that and I'll get more success or I'll get a better mate. It's a very primal kind of animalistic Darwinian survival of the fittest drive that we have in us. We're being pushed as men to do that. We're being pushed to be and procreate. That's just in our DNA. It's just what mammals do, right?
Yeah.
But we're not mammals anymore. And this confusion of what's pushing us to compete and pushing us to meet a definition is we become something that we're not purely for the sake of succeeding, but it's not really us. And when we're not really us, we're unauthentic and it's not sustainable and it leads to grief because we fall. We can't sustain something that we're not. And so I see a lot of men looking at social media and TV saying maybe I should act like this or maybe I should act like that. Or a lot of Republicans say that Democrats are wussies and they're not real men. So maybe I should have different political views. And so all of the society is telling us what to be, and men don't know who to be anymore. They're
Mhm.
confused on what it means to be a real man. And that confusion leads to a lot of unauthenticity, a lot of bad choices, a lot of masking, a lot of pretending. And oddly enough, the perception of masculinity or the perception of being a real man works for a lot of young men, and they emulate things that aren't even real.
Yeah.
Because to me, the strongest thing you can do isn't lift a weight, but actually face yourself and express vulnerabilities. There's nothing stronger than looking inward and saying, I suck at this, and this made me cry, and this I feel weak about. Those are the strong things to do that most people steer away from. And so I really just want to help people. I really want to share what I've learned and share how you shed all this, masking and portrayals, archetypes, and just get rid of them and learn how to be yourself and how to look inward and what that looks like and what do you have to do to be vulnerable and to express vulnerability. And oddly enough, and I practice this a lot, the more used to stepping up to that strength of being vulnerable, what ends up happening is you become invulnerable, become so strong that you don't care about sharing weaknesses. And that makes this a massive amount of confidence that you exude energetically and in a social setting that is way more powerful than pretending to be an alpha male or pretending to be masculine.
Yeah, it's like who's the stronger, tougher boxer? The guy who has an unbelievable block that you can't get through it,
Yeah.
or the guy who doesn't need a block because you can literally just pummel the guy and it doesn't affect him.
That's a great analogy. It's exactly kind of what it is. Yeah. You don't get hurt by it.
Yeah.
And you become kind of an alpha in a circuitous way. You become, so confident that nothing really matters.
Yeah.
Again, I use self-mastery because what that means is you're able to talk to yourself and manage your own thoughts and manage your own vulnerabilities to recognize that those vulnerabilities are yours and yours alone. And they're brought and carried to this stage in life from your past and these memories and these experiences as a kid, and that those vulnerabilities are just yours and they're not really real. They're programmed and they didn't have a spam filter. And so when you can contextualize that only you're having this experience and it's really not real, and you can talk about who you want to be. I always say, behave in the way you want to be. Even if you're not that person yet, still
So true.
behave that way. Because now
Yeah.
you're building a muscle memory. So when I would feel really insecure or really vulnerable, that's exactly when I would say, that was an invitation to step into weakness and say it.
Yeah.
And that was the invitation. And that's what built the strength is behaving in the way I wanted to be. I wanted to be so strong that I could share my deepest weaknesses with anybody and just say it. And so that's when I said, this is a life I want to live. And I had to say this. And I did.
Yeah.
And
Is
that's what
now
the book's been about.
is that a journey, or I mean, so for example, do you have to be the boxer who has the impenetrable block so that you can become the boxer who can get hit, or can you skip directly to the spiritual version that you're talking about?
You can definitely skip. All this is, again, back to spirituality, right? This is,
Yeah.
again, the spirituality that we talked about, going over the body, reacting beyond the body. Okay. Nietzsche described this character called the Ubermensch in 1880. The Ubermensch is the man of self-mastery, the man of self-control. And he talked about this man starting on this side of the ravine as an animal, crossing a rope over a ravine to God. So as a human, your path was this path, okay? And the path along this rope, this tightrope, as he called it, was chaotic and difficult, and things would keep pulling you back on the animal side, right?
Mhm.
Fear, jealousy, anger, despair, grief, all of these emotions. And also, people would laugh at you if you tried this journey, which they do now. They don't always conform to you breaking free of where they are. Okay. Now you can choose to cross this path, which I would suggest people try to do. And even in his book, he would say that that's a very noble trait as a human. Even if you fail, it's noble to try. And most
Yeah.
people don't try. They don't understand that there's two parts of us, like you described. You called it the primitive side, and then the Sherlock Holmes side, right?
Yeah.
We do
The
have that
Conan
in us.
and the Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
Right. And so we do have those in us. Most people, the Conan side is more powerful because it has physical neurotransmitters that are very powerful. Fear is very powerful. And so, but you have to try. Now, your friend's son may not have a choice. At some point, he may have to just pick a new path. I got taken to my knees in my life. I had an injury. My friend died. I lost my house through my divorce, which I decided to leave. I wasn't talking to my parents. Like my life got so bad that I wasn't given a choice either. I had to find a new way. But for those who want to try to head it off, they can do it now. And if you don't, this path is for all of us. All of us have this journey. This is the journey of understanding who we are beyond the body. We are the only animal on this planet that has cognition, and our understanding to reconcile between Conan and Sherlock Holmes is everyone's journey. Joseph Campbell wrote about it in his book. Everyone has this journey, and it's been going on for thousands of years through history and time. It's just our path. It's just our journey. And whether you do it in this lifetime or the next lifetime, you're going to do it. It's just the way that it is.
Yeah, I think part of what we need to do in order to cultivate that in our sons is definitely model that behavior. And that maybe that's 80% of it, maybe that's 90% of it. But what else can we do to help cultivate that self-mastery in our sons?
Well, I think encouraging them to have the courage to feel pain, encouraging them to have the courage to do difficult things, and praising them as young men, as young boys, for the courage it took to do something rather than the achievement of it. I always praise courage more than achievement because I think, promoting courage is ultimately what this takes. It takes a lot to act over fear.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to act over things you don't want to do. I think anything we've done, our mind tells us it's a good thing to do at the time. And then, a year later, like, yeah, that really wasn't a good idea. Right.
That's for sure.
And sometimes it's just too hard. And I think, one of I have this thing on my book called The Basics. One of the basics is awareness. Awareness is to know what you don't know. Awareness is to stop and recognize when there's a moment for you as a parent or you as an individual, maybe as a teenager, to have the awareness to know that you're in that situation that you really should try to figure out what you can't see. And that takes a lot of courage. And so to help raise our kids, you don't want to always fight with your kids. So I don't always critique them as much as I want to. And my, girlfriend now and now wife would say, hey, you should tell them, you should have said this. I said, like, I can't critique them every second.
Yeah.
Right? Like it takes time for them to have better manners. So I'm not going to tell them every time they didn't open a door for a lady. Like I know they have bad manners, but I don't want to fight with them every time. And so as a parent, I need to balance my goals with them and then how I approach it to them. And now they're older, so it's really they're not really a child. I'll say, hey, as an adult, I'll say things like, a lot of people value manners. A lot of places in society looks favorably on having manners. I just want to make sure that you know that, and that's all I can do at this point. And then I model behavior.
I think that's spectacular. At the end of every episode, I like to ask, what is one principle that you try to live by in order to raise amazing men?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I think where my parenting changed the most from my past life when I was married and I was very on the animal side of that equation to the more spiritual side is to treat my children like equals. When I looked at them as equals spiritually, they could be even an older soul than me. And that's harder to practice. Once you understand it, you actually have to practice it, which means is my role isn't to parent them. It's to give them information that my humanity, my human body has more experience in them. I can reach a higher shelf than them. I can show them where failures might occur, but to respect them to make their own choices and treat them like equals or if not higher has created such a more powerful relationship with me and my children. I don't talk down to them. I don't demand things of them. I respect them. I don't say no for the sake of saying no. I tell them why things are important. I respect them and explain to them why I'm saying no or why I'm saying yes, but ultimately it's up to them. I think that's probably the number one thing I wish I would have had as a parent previously before I learned this.
I think that's spectacular. Dave is the founder of Dave Rossi Global, best-selling author of The Imperative Habit. For a deeper dive, check out Dave's new book, Alphas Die Early, and his work at daverossiglobal.com. The link is in the show notes. Raising Men is produced by Fiel Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.